Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Miss October, and today we're diving into the complex topic of mental health and the importance of community, especially when living in a metropolis. Joining me today is holistic psychotherapist and owner of Savannah Wellness Concepts, LLC, Bria Brown. Bria is dedicated to helping individuals create meaningful change and lasting balance in their lives. She specializes in teaching mindfulness techniques that empower clients to slow down, reconnect with themselves, and discover practical solutions for long-term healing and growth. Utilizing both a holistic and contextually grounded approach, Bria focuses on the whole person, their environment, and lived experiences. She integrates mindfulness practices with evidence-based strategies and guides clients toward cognitive clarity, emotional resilience, and sustainable wellness. Let's welcome Miss Bria Brown.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. That was a lovely intro.
Like you're a professional. I love that. So thank you for taking time out just to have a conversation. I think this time of the year when we talk about mental health is very prevalent around the holidays, around the wintertime, and things like that. So I just want to dive in. And if you could tell me how you got started in this space.
Yeah. So I always knew that I wanted to help people. I just didn't know how I wanted to go, upon that. Initially, I really wanted to be a pediatrician. And then when I got, further into school, I was like, this math and science thing is a little bit tricky. So I wound up going to undergrad. I got my bachelor's in psychology. And I decided to get my master's in social work because I knew that I could be a therapist or help people that way without necessarily having to go to school to get a PhD. And there were a lot of things that I could do with a social work degree. I know people think, when they hear social work, they think like, oh, you work in CPS or you do all that. And yes, that is a part of it, but it's so much more that you can do, including being a therapist, which is what I do. So that is where I am now.
Nice, lovely. So you say that you got your master's in social work, right? And so when we try to merge social work and mental health, because like you said, it just isn't, CPS or things like that. So tell me how you got involved in the space of holistic therapy.
Yeah. So when I was in graduate school, I spent a lot of time in elementary schools and high schools and working with young people and just realizing some of the gaps that were there. And I realized like, okay, this is a necessary space where there's work to be done. And the reason that I wanted to take a holistic approach is because you can focus on your mental health, but if we're talking about other things that are missing, it's like you're not filling in the gaps. Like we can talk about your mental health, but what's going on in your relationships? What's going on at work? What's going on? Are your basic needs being met? It's a whole thing that we have to consider and not just one thing, because you can come to a session with me and we can talk about your mental health, but if you have to go back into a toxic environment, it's only with so much we can do. We need to talk about what's going on with these systems, what's going on with this environment, what changes do you need to make outside of just taking these coping skills to work within this environment. And so that's what I mean when I say utilizing a holistic approach to be able to help people across the board. So yeah.
That's good. Have you seen a difference in your approach versus maybe that standardized approach where they're not digging into the entire scope? Just what you said, you have to go back to a toxic environment. That may be a relationship. That may be a job. That may be just your inner voice, the way that you speak to yourself. Have you noticed any difference as far as the efficacy of therapy when we talk about looking at the whole person versus just, okay, you're here because, you are depressed?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a saying, you can't heal in the same place where you were hurt. And so I think that really applies, because if we're talking about healing, you healing as an individual, you healing within yourself, that's cool, right? But if you take this and you try to go immerse yourself back into environments, whether it's a relationship with, a partner or family or work, and it's like you're fighting an uphill battle all the time. And so we have to, like I said, look at the bigger picture and think about, well, how do we take what we're learning here? How do we take this? And then how do you also make other changes in your life so it's sustainable? It's not just reactionary? How do you make this sustainable so that the entirety of your life feels better and not just this one portion of your life? I think that, and this isn't to say, people who go to therapy and they just focus on these things and they, want to go back to these environments, so they have to. It's not to say that therapy can't be helpful, but I just like to consider the entire system or the entire person or the entire thing, in terms of their life, because most of my sessions are virtual, but if they are in person, once you leave that door or once the screen turns off, it's like you have to go back and it's just an uphill battle. So how do we make this a little bit easier across the board for you?
Now, your start seems to be very youth oriented, right? And so can you speak to the differences that you may see with the youth that are struggling with mental health versus adults, and what does that look like, especially the difference?
That's a good question. It's not as much of a difference as you probably would think. I think at the foundation, it's a lot. Well, I think a lot of things start in childhood, and a lot of things go on that are unresolved. And so, a lot of what I see in adults, we spend a lot of time going back to childhood and things that maybe you didn't have space or freedom or safety to discuss or to explore. I think that I really honestly think if there were safer spaces for children to be able to express themselves, to be seen, to be heard, to feel validated, to be apologized to when someone did something wrong to them, you'll take those skills into adulthood and you'll be able to fare a little bit better. In children, developmentally, we're talking about peer relationships. If there is some trauma that's going on, within their family systems or at school or wherever else. And if there are some diagnoses that are, there, working through some of those things. A lot of times with children, obviously, you have to consider their family units, their parents or guardians or whomever, and working with them. And adults, sometimes the diagnoses get a little bit more complex. For the clinicians out there, that DSM and those things that
she's starting with the acronyms.
That the DSM is like the therapist or the psychologist is like our manual that kind of helps us with the diagnoses. But with adults, like I said, sometimes you have more complex diagnoses, and like I said, some of those things that probably have been unresolved since childhood. And as an adult, you have the authority or the autonomy to make certain decisions and choices that you may not have as a child. And so giving yourself permission to actually make these choices to say, okay, well, now I can do this differently, or I can or cannot engage with this person, or I can, do this a little bit differently, and you don't have to wait for anybody to give you permission to do that. And so those, I think, are the main differences. But like I said, it's really all connected, if I'm being honest. A lot of it, is just stuff that you haven't had the space or freedom to really address from childhood or earlier on in your life, into adulthood. So finally having the time and the space to actually kind of dig in a little bit deeper.
So what you just said was so interesting about having the safety as a child to say someone hurt my feelings, or to speak about something that has happened to you that, you may not otherwise have had that freedom. So I know for me, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, and especially when we're talking about inner city, right? Born and raised DC my entire life. And I also feel that this is a cultural thing, right? What happens in this house stays in this house, right? And so it could be aunties, uncles. What happens in this house stays in this house. So I feel as children, we were never really given the safety to express, when things are awry in our lives. So I'm wondering, I'm a mom of 3, I have adult children as well as adolescents. And I would like to say that I've created an environment where they can feel safe, to come to me and verbalize different things in their life. But as a community, one, how important is that? And then secondly, how do we foster? What are some tips or some techniques, and how do we foster in the youth? It's okay. You can speak about your emotions. Let's not be reactive. Let's first of all understand our different emotions. Understand that these emotions are okay, but it's the way in which we walk in that and the way in which we respond and not react to that that's going to make the bigger difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to start this off by saying I'm not a parent, so I can give perspective from a certain space. I think as a community, especially as a Black community, starting with just because we do it doesn't make it right. Like just because it's tradition doesn't mean that it is correct. And some of these things can be harmful. Some of the things that we say to children, some of the ways that we, prevent, honestly, safe spaces is harmful. And it takes a lot of work to undo that or to unravel that as an adult. So realizing, first of all, that you're only a child for a little while. You're not just raising a child, you're raising a human being. And this person is going to transition into adulthood with the skills that you give them. So if you stifle or you limit a child's ability to be able to identify their emotions or to express them or to say that, actually, I don't like that, or that did make me upset, or that did make me angry, or I don't know how I feel and I need a little bit of help, identifying that. If you never create that environment, then what happens when they become an adult? You don't know how you feel. When you feel these big emotions, you become dysregulated. You don't know how to express those emotions. And I have this analogy that I use that we are not this kind of thing. When I say we, meaning humans, we're not this thing where we have this unlimited capacity to just box and bottle all of our emotions. Imagine that, when you get ready to move, like from an apartment to a house or whatever it may be, you have a cardboard box. You put all of your things in the cardboard box and you keep packing it and you keep packing it. But if you overpack that box, what happens? It breaks, it ruptures, it falls out at the bottom. It's the same way with humans. We don't have this unlimited capacity to hold all of these feelings in. If something's going to break, and unfortunately, a lot of times that break happens at the most inopportune spaces and times. And then when you become an adult, and that thing breaks, sometimes it can put you in a tight spot that's not easy to get out of. So I say all this to say that just realizing that you're not just pouring into children, you're fostering environments for them to learn how to become fully functional and whole adults who have emotions just like you do, and who need to learn how to get in touch with them. And also, again, I'm not a parent, but I would like to say that even if you were never taught how to get in touch with your emotions, or even if you never had that space, you can try. Like you can do the work to be able to work with your children, to be able to create that environment together. And be honest with your kids. If you're learning, tell them you're learning. If you get it wrong, hey, I messed that up. I'm sorry. Like, let's rewind, let's retrack. And that teaches them how to then, okay, my mom or my dad, when they made a mistake, they apologized to me. So that's something that I can do. It's normal.
Accountability.
I can be accountable for myself, and I can make mistakes, and it's okay. And I can get it together, and I can try again. So those are the things that I would say. And like I said, just especially as a Black community, just because we do it doesn't make it right. And realizing that if you want something different, you have to make the effort to do something different, even if it's uncomfortable.
You have to lead by example. And it's so funny that you say, just because it was done previously does not mean that it's right. So when I hear that, I think about breaking the chain, right? Breaking the cycle. It stops here. So in our community, and I know I'm sounding very repetitive, but it's almost like a badge of honor to be able to hold so much, to be able to withstand so much, to be able to carry so much on your back until that breaking point. But up until that point, it's almost a badge of honor. You're tough. You've got this. You're doing what needs to be done. But I think that creates either an overly emotional adult or quite the opposite, someone who is kind of disconnected. Disassociated with reality that may be, so I think that starting young, one, is very important. But then secondly, if you are an adult and you are having trouble with your emotions or anything like that, being able to recognize it and pause and say, you know what, I do not want this, and we're going to course correct. And then taking baby steps continuously to go in the direction that, that you see fit. Just speaking from personal experience, I grew up very rough, extremely rough. But when I became an adult, and just things that transpired in my life, I knew that I had to take a different course. And it's no slight to how, what was taught to me, how I was raised, but I knew that I didn't want myself to continue to go through life in a certain manner. And then secondly, my children to experience a portion of what I've experienced, but then also I don't want to stifle them. Because you're only, like you said, you're only a child. You're only with your parents for so long. So leading by example, right? Taking accountability, all of these things, they seem so minute, but when you're doing them constantly and when you're putting them into practice, you'll be amazed to see the different outcomes, that shall be. And today, I want to say, especially with the youth that we have running through the inner city, where they mother at? Where they role models at? Because back when we were growing up, they would say it took a village, right?
Yeah.
It took a village. So if I got in trouble at home, I'm getting in trouble at the corner store, when Miss Mary see me, when Miss Ethel see me, whoever sees me, I'm getting in trouble over and over again because they want to make sure that you understand what's going on and that this ain't that, and we're going to move differently, moving forward. So I take my hat off to you, especially with working with the youth, because it's not easy. It is not easy. And just what you said, they are also human beings too. They're just little human beings, and we have to guide them and show them the way that they should go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So with that, how were you able, because you are also a DC native, right?
I am.
How were you able to kind of manage your emotions? What type of techniques and skills did you have to learn and gather along the way from adolescence, through adulthood, that could help you not only just regulate your emotions, but then pour into others to help them be able to regulate their lives and their emotions?
Well, I'll say this. I am a therapist. This is what I do. This is not who I am. So I am a human, so I'm still learning and I'm still growing. I think for me, a couple of things that were pivotal was learning how to sit with myself and my emotions and allow them to just be. Sometimes it can be very easy to be avoidant or to feel like I shouldn't feel this way or I can't have this emotion, because if you're not given a safe space to have these emotions or to express them, then it's very easy to be avoidant and be like, oh, I'm just gonna put it to the side. But giving myself permission to sit with myself and to like, I'm actually sad right now and it's okay. Like, I can be sad. It's normal. It's okay. And also, kind of in the same line as giving myself permission to express my emotions, because I used to hold a lot of stuff in and not be honest about how I felt and not be clear, or not, when somebody did something to me, just kind of like chalk it up and just hold it in. But like I said earlier, I'm not this person or this entity with this unlimited capacity to just hold all of this stuff in, because it's going to come out one way or the other. And then in terms of being able to translate these things that I've learned to other people, obviously through my training, schooling and the other trainings that we take, but also just understanding what it is to be a human being. I think that is really a big part of what makes me successful with my clients is, yes, you are my client, but I see you as a human and I understand you, obviously to the best of my ability on that level first. And I'm able to intertwine those things. So, those are just a few of the things that I think initially helped me on my journey, just being able to sit with my emotions and being able to say, like, I'm actually upset right now. I'm actually sad right now. Or I'm happy. Giving myself permission to experience joy fully and not have to have like a caveat. Like, I'm happy, I'm joyful, I can experience this, it's okay. And I'm the person that can give myself permission to feel these things. Nobody else has to give me permission to feel these things. And so those are the first few steps I think that I took. And I think that those are the things that also help me with my clients, and just being able to help them foster their own safety within themselves to feel their emotions and to just be able to sit in them. And it's okay. Even if...
Give yourself grace.
Yeah. Even if this is the only space right now where you can give yourself, like you said, the grace or the space to feel all of your emotions, that's cool. We can start there. Because the goal is for you to be able to take these skills outside of this session and give yourself, again, I keep saying that permission, but that permission and that authority to just be with yourself and be one with yourself and not wait for anybody else to give you permission, or to not allow anybody else's projections to stop you from being able to do those things.
Yes, to stop you, to rattle you, all of those things. It's interesting that you say one way that you process your emotions is that you sit with yourself, right? I find that so interesting because I am the exact same way. Mm-hmm. When my life is topsy-turvy, I immediately have to press pause and I have to sit in it. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because my husband is totally different. He has to keep moving. He has to, keep that sense of normalcy. Whereas I have to pause everything around me and center on what is this emotion that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this emotion? Not only why am I feeling this emotion, if it had something to do with someone else, what's the underlying tone? What's the underlying reason that I'm even letting this rattle me? Yeah. And that's hard to do for some people, to sit in that silence, to sit with yourself and to look yourself in the mirror and say, sometimes, what part did I play
Absolutely.
in this? What part did I play in this, either frustrating me, whatever it is? And that goes back to accountability. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of that, giving yourself permission and grace to say, okay, what steps now do I take to get myself to where I need to be? Mm-hmm. It's funny because in the moment, sometimes we don't even recognize emotions for what they want to be. And I say all the time, I feel one emotion. That's typically rage. That's almost like the only emotion that I can connect with, because sadness, I may be sad for a minute and I can pull myself out of it. Happiness, and this is going to sound crazy, it's also the same thing. If I am happy for too long, I'm like, whoa, now, hold on. It's going way too well. What's on the flip side of that coin? But rage and anger is almost like a mirror to me. It's almost comforting. And so I'm on my daughter's 13, so about my 13-year journey. Yeah. Where I had to look myself in the mirror and say, the life that you live in is not the life that's going to sustain you. Mm. The life that I'm living, the actions that I am creating, the reactions that I am having to whatever is happening in my life is going to land me in two places. And in both of them, I don't want to be. Yeah. Right. And so you have to be aware of that and then practice that in your daily life, because it's real cool when we're on the couch to be like, you got to sit with yourself and you have to be one. But let me tell you something. If you go to work and Karen, she done pushed on your reserve nerve for the day, I ain't got nothing left for you, Slim. So now I didn't all the tools that I had are completely gone in the moment. Yeah. And that was something that I struggled with for over a decade. I was all peace and love. But if you come at me on the right day, the right time, everything that I have built up for 10, 12, 13 years is down the drain. Yeah. So it's very integral that we not only are aware, but we practice that in the moment. And for me, it is the power of the pause. Mm-hmm. And I tell people this all the time, pause. If you feel disrespected, if you feel that, your day isn't going the way that you wanted to, an interaction, a relationship, whatever it is, there is power in the pause. Mm-hmm. To say, let me regroup, let me understand why I'm feeling this way, and then what is the best response and not reaction. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about response and reaction, again, in our community, in my family, I come from a family of basically all women. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking all alpha women, all strong women, right? And so I was never given any tools of how to respond. It was just straight, I'm going for your neck because we're going to end this right now, right? So it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I had to start with the man in the mirror and say, okay, I'm looking at all of the women around me and they're wonderful, but in the midst of conflict, in the midst of a bad day, I saw the way that they were reacting and I was seeing my future self. Mm. And I loved them to pieces, but I did not want to be that. Yeah. I did not want my children to see that. And it's funny because I have a 20-year-old, so he basically grew up, with me. He caught me. I had him at 22, 23 years old. So he's seen it. But I don't want my children to know me by that. Mm-hmm. And then that's also the example that I'm giving to them. Yeah. So I tried meditation. It didn't work. I tried, yoga, it didn't work. What are some tools? It didn't work in a moment. I'm a little better now. I'm able to regulate myself, and I did do yoga once, but the the instructor farted, and I lost all the centering that I took myself to get there. At that point, everything went out of the window, and I realized I was not as mature and centered as I thought I was, because I fucked the whole class up. Nobody could get it together after that. So what are some techniques and tools that we can use in our community to help us, when we're faced with adversity?
It's funny because the way you kind of walk through that whole resting and pausing thing, there's literally a therapeutic skill called REST. And
Hello.
It's an acronym. And that is one of my favorite things to start with. It is an acronym, but the R is to relax or to stop or to pause. Honestly, a pause can save your life. Mm-hmm. A pause can save somebody else's life, especially if you're used to being reactionary, or if being reactionary is your defense mechanism, if it's what allows you to feel safe because you're taking control, or you're taking control of whatever before you feel like it can take control of you. But pause for a second, because it'll give you an opportunity to assess what's going on. I'm gonna come back to the rest skill, but when our nervous systems are in fight or flight, sometimes our nervous systems can process something as a threat that's not a threat. The analogy that I gave is, imagine that you're walking in a forest or a jungle and you see a bear. Our nervous systems are wired to fight the bear, to run from the bear. Sometimes it's freezing, and there's another one called fawn, but for the purposes of this, I'm not going to mention that. From my perspective, or in my perspective, what you go through in life determines how you respond to the bear.
Amen. And
this is an example, right? Where every day we're not walking through a jungle, we're not going to see a bear. But for some people, conflict is the bear. For some people, a difficult conversation is the bear. For some people, a person is the bear. And your nervous system kind of switches into that fight, flight, or freeze before your brain logically can catch up with what it is that you need to do, you want to do in that moment. So pausing can give you a moment to actually assess, is this an actual threat? Am I going to be harmed? Am I in harm's way? Or are my feelings or are my emotions responding because this feels like a threat? And how you respond when you feel like something is a threat versus how you would when it's not a threat, usually it's night and day.
Yeah.
So pausing to give yourself a moment to kind of check yourself, right? The next, in the rest skill, the next is E, evaluate. What are the facts? You don't have to figure everything out right now, but what are the facts? Your feelings are probably telling you something, but what evidence do you have? What is the hard factual evidence that you have right now? Because that can give you some information about the next step, which is to set an intention. What is it that I want or need to do in this moment to move forward? And then the last one is to take action. T is to take action. That is something that can be critical. It doesn't have to be something that takes a long time. It doesn't have to be something that's super complex, but pausing, evaluating, setting an intention, and taking action in certain moments, especially when you feel like you're being threatened or your nervous system is in fight or flight. Like I said, it can save your life or somebody else's life, or probably keep you from making a decision that, well, you probably have to do some damage control later on. So that is definitely something that I would say, to do. And in terms of learning how to sit with yourself, I think it's very easy, like I said, to either be avoidant or to kind of always have to busy yourself or do certain things. But being able, one of the most powerful things I feel like we can do as people is to be able to just sit with ourselves. It's hard and it's scary. Especially when you're feeling really big feelings. But a lot of times we don't realize that the avoidance or the kind of busyness, how deeply, first of all, how oftentimes it's generational. If you back, at your grandmas, especially as women, as your moms, your grandmas, when they always doing something, always busy, can't never sit down, always got to clean something, always got to go do this, always got to go do that. They're probably anxious. They're probably and can't sit still with their thoughts because it's too much and it's too overwhelming.
So just what you were saying, right? Keeping yourself busy and all the things. I know growing up, that's what we had to do, because the moment that you took a rest, the moment that you stop, it's like, what, you being lazy? It's always something to do. So I feel like, that just intertwines with giving yourself grace and knowing thyself. So for all of those who don't know, this is, I want to say my baby sister, but she's not a baby anymore. She's a whole psychotherapist. But one thing that I remember telling you growing up is to thine own self be true. Meaning, I don't give a shit what these people out here are saying. And these people out here could very well be your mama, your family. It is up to you. Whatever you're feeling in your heart, that's what you go with. That's how you lead. And I hope, from what I see, you have definitely carried that throughout your life. But I can almost imagine how hard that is when you come from a family that has such high expectations, when you've performed at such a high level your entire life, but the core of who you are, you may want to be a free spirit. You know, you may want to be an artist and things like that. So just exactly what you said. We're growing up with these strong women. We've never been given any grace. We've never been given a chance to rest because it almost feels like guilt.
Yeah.
It almost feels like guilt. And when you go through that acronym, of rest, to me, as a human being, it sounds nice, but I got about 6 seconds. From the time I'm feeling threatened, uncomfortable, whatever it is, I got about 6 seconds to go through. I need to pause. I need to evaluate. I need to, what was the S?
Set an intention.
I need to set, because the intention is I'm about to take you down. So how are you able to do that in the moment? And if you have 10 seconds or less, how are you able to put that in action? That's hard to do.
Yeah.
And especially when your core is reactive, your core is so strong, your core is to neutralize the threat before it even gets any further. And I think you said that lends itself to control. That is very hard to do.
Absolutely.
In the moment. So what are some techniques? And I know I mentioned yoga. I know I mentioned, what else? Meditating. I cannot
yoga
meditate. You just came from a yoga class?
No, I was saying that yoga class you mentioned.
Okay, so the yoga class, very quickly. I was at a work event and with my coworkers, my CEO and everything. And the last morning we all had like a wellness session, which included yoga. Well, before that, we all took our asses to the breakfast buffet. Okay. And one of my coworkers specifically had, about 16 eggs, just nothing but scrambled eggs piled up. So as we're walking to yoga, she goes, maybe I shouldn't have eaten all those eggs. We're getting ready to do some stretching. So the whole time we're expecting her to be the one to let it go. And the freaking instructor, we had been about 3 or 4 minutes in, and she's like, we're going to do a deep stretch. And my coworker says, oh, I'm so glad it wasn't me. And when she said that, it took me out because I knew for sure those eggs is about to take her ass out in the middle of yoga. So I've never even gotten through a whole yoga session. I've gotten through about 5 minutes because they kicked me out after that because I was a disruption to the entire class. So what are some tips that that work? That you can give us?
Well, I hope you give yoga another try someday.
I don't know.
Well, first of all, knowing that you're not going to get it right all the time. I can give you every skill in the book, and it takes practice. It's like you're building a muscle. When you go to the gym and you're just starting out, you're going to struggle. You're going to be sore. You're not going to get your form correct every time. It's the same thing. You're not going to get it right every time. It takes practice and it takes consistency. And it's not just, I'm going to practice it for a month and then from a month from now I'm going to get it right. No, to your point, sometimes it's going to take years to I'm not even going to say get it right, but to find your rhythm. And I prefer the idea of rhythm over balance because balance is kind of stagnant, right? But life is not. And if you think of a song, right, and a song has a rhythm, it has like different parts, and it's like sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I'm not a super into all the music, I don't know technical things, but it works though. It's up, it's down, it's whatever, but it works together. Every day you're not going to be up, every day you're not going to be down. Life moves fast, and you find your rhythm, and so sometimes that rhythm is going to be, I had a moment, I used this skill and I got it right. Sometimes it's going to be, I had a moment and I went smooth off on this person and I didn't get it right. But all of that works together in honestly, I would say in your best interest as long as you keep going. Yeah. And you don't let the moments where you don't get it right kind of take you completely off course or knock you off your square. I will also say being able to surround yourself with people who are on the same wavelength. It's really hard to use these skills around people who either have no desire to do any type of work or who just aren't on the same kind of wavelength as you. It doesn't mean that you can't be in relationship with them, but you have to be honest with yourself about what the impact that their actions is having on you, especially when you're trying to grow and evolve and heal.
Yes, I tell people all the time, being equally yoked is not just for your relationships. It's not just for your marriage or your partnerships. There's something to be said about being equally yoked in community, being equally yoked in friendship, being equally yoked in environment. And if you've used to being in one environment, it may seem so far off to get yourself to where you need to be. Speaking from personal experience, I was a hothead my entire life. When I was 30, I went to God and said, like, I don't want to live like this. Help me. And what did that look like? Exactly what you just said. I remember 5 years strong. I was getting tested, the same test. And I realized it in the moment. For 5 years, I was going in a loop of the same test. And every time I failed it. Every single time. And I knew in the moment I failed it. But I will never forget this one day. Somebody I was at work. They pissed me off to no end. And I just walked off. I walked away. I walked off and I went to my car and I called my cousin and I was in tears, but I was so excited. I was like, I passed the test. He's like, what test? I was like, this mother. You know, tell him all the things. But the fact that I had the power to just walk away made me feel so good. And that had been 5 years of the same thing. And then the cycle started all over again. So now I have to put that into practice all over again with different people, different scenarios. And that shit is taxing. It's hard, but the reward is so worth it. So one thing that I can say is finding people who are equally yoked, meaning if you're on a journey and you're trying to change, they don't have to change with you. But accept where you're going. Pour into you. Don't take away from me. I don't need to be in an environment where you're a hothead. I'm a hothead. You know, we're both going off at the same time. So how do you find your community? I feel like you're really good with that. You were here in DC and then you moved to Atlanta for some time. And when you were in Atlanta, I mean, you found a community of hikers and wellness coaches, and you became, you know, a wellness coach. And how do you find your community of people who, even if they aren't where you are now, you see something in them where you want to be?
I think, well, first of all, being honest with yourself about like who you are. I think for me, really being honest with myself about, like, I'm not a clubber. Like, I don't like those environments. It's just not me. It's nothing, you know, against anybody else who does those things. But you have to be honest with yourself about, like, what works for you and who you are. And you'll be able to see those things in other people. But if you're not honest with yourself and you're just trying to get in where you fit in, you're going to connect with people where there is some misalignment. And you think it seems cool, but you know deep down inside this isn't working for you. You leave those environments, you feel drained, you feel exhausted, you feel dysregulated. And so being really honest with myself about who I am, even if that means that I don't fit in with certain crowds or it doesn't make me popular, I have peace. So that is my biggest thing. Do I feel at peace around you? Do I feel like we are on the same wavelength? Can I have conversations with you about, you know, a gamut of things, and we're not gossiping all the time and we're not just talking reckless all the time? Because, well, again, on the surface, that may seem cool. For me, it's draining. It's exhausting. Like, let's go hike in the trees and
Let's go touch grass.
let's go touch grass and get some good oxygen, like things like that. And I'm not shading anybody or anything, but it just started with me. For me, it has always started with just being honest about who I am and letting go of the idea of who I'm supposed to be. I had to release attachment to that because that's based on what other people want from me. And at the end of the day, I'm the only person who has to, like, when I'm at home by myself, and it's just me and my thoughts, and I have to be at peace with that. You ain't got to worry about that. I do. So I can't carry what you want from me more so than what I want for myself.
Exactly.
And that's the biggest thing that I would say. And again, even if it means, it's actually going to mean that you might not fit in with certain groups or people that you've been in a relationship with for a long time, that you're not as close to them, or you're not friends with them anymore, you're not connected with them anymore. It doesn't mean it's beef. It just means that we're evolving in different ways, and it's cool. Like, it doesn't have to be anything catastrophic, or it doesn't have to be drama. It's just that life is taking us in different directions, and that's that. And it also doesn't mean that you don't have to be in a relationship with that person. I have people that we cool with. We can connect when we connect, but there's limits. That's what I would say. Because that's for my own peace and my ability to be able to function and live my life the way I need to, so that I can lay my head down at night and just know that, like, I'm cool, you know?
And I can only imagine how difficult it is conveying that message to the youth, because they all want to fit in. They all want to be accepted. It's almost like copy paste. You know what I mean? Everything is the same. Yeah. So I can almost imagine the difficulty it is to tell the youth, find your people, find your community, who you've been friends with, during high school, or that may not be your tribe right now. And that's very difficult as an adult. And I can imagine as a child or an adolescent, not necessarily a child, how does that make them feel? How do they navigate through that? Like, what is the first step? You know what I mean? Of saying, this is where I've been, but this is not where I want to be anymore. And especially if your community is all one way, everyone around you does the same thing, all of the same principles are accepted. You don't have an example of any change. Yeah. You don't have an example of what it looks like on the other side.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I don't necessarily know if I have all the answers for that, but what I will say is that, not to get super clinical, some of this is developmentally appropriate. And what I mean by that is, as an adolescent, a part of your development is your friendships, and your relationships, and fitting in and figuring those things out, and learning within your peer relationships is really critical for brain development in adolescence. And so figuring it out, fumbling, not always getting it right. And that's how you learn. But once you start transitioning into young adulthood and you start to learn more principles, I think it's really important that you brought it up earlier, your village, it matters. Because at that point, you're probably going to emulate what you see. Yeah. And so I think it's not just all on the young people or the children, the adults or the people that are in their village. It's important what examples you set before them, because that's what they're going to emulate until they're able to make their own decisions and choices. Knowing that you're not going to always get it right. You might, I remember in high school, I got close with some people and I was like, ooh, these are the cool kids. I'm in. And it's just it didn't feel good. But it was ooh, I like the kind of popularity, but it's we not really clicking. And so I had to figure that out on my own, though, and figure out which way do I want to go. And it wasn't really anybody that gave me the right or wrong answer. It was just you have to figure out what feels good and what works for you, and what is to your point, true to you, to that own self, be true. But as an adolescent, you have to be honest, it's hard because you want to fit in. You want to be in the crowd. You want to do those things. And so you learn. And one thing that I would say for adults, whether you are a parent, you're in their village, you're a teacher, whatever it may be, is there's a saying that the same day that you plant the seed is not the same day you're going to see the fruit. Okay. And so you give the lessons, you be honest about the friendships, you share your reflections if you need to, but you have to allow them to make their own choices and decisions, and trust that it's going to bear fruit, when you get older. There are a lot of lessons that I've, heard from my grandmother and my parents and things like that, and in the moment I'm I don't want to hear all that. Go ahead. But now, as an adult, it's I hear the fruit is there. And so that's what I would say, trusting that as a parent or as an adult that's, guiding the youth or in their village, that some of this figuring it out is developmentally appropriate.
So also, let them make the mistakes. Let them. But also guide them back to where they need to be.
Don't let them go too far, though. Right?
Oh, yeah, no.
Let them make mistakes with boundaries. But it's a part of their development. Because think about it. If you're too strict and you're too, kind of hovering, again, when they become adults, they're not going to know how to make decisions and choices. They don't have the tools, yeah. And they're probably going to be easily swayed to do this or that. Or, they're going to struggle more than I think that they have to if they were given a little bit more space to make mistakes, to figure it out, to learn who's for them, who's not for them, who they want to be in their relationships and things like that. So those are the biggest things that I would say.
Okay. That was a Really good tips. Let them make mistakes. Look, the first time my kids act like they want to make a mistake, I gotta reel them back in because I know my kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're, yeah, I know that they're gonna go all the way to the left. So that's something that I try to keep in the top of my mind. Now, when we talk about rest and we talk about pause, one thing that I wanted to connect with you on is breath work. How integral is breath work as far as decompressing, as far as clarity? Just tell me what you know about breath work, how it can be beneficial. And then what are some, can we go through like a breath work exercise? I'm not going to laugh. I promise you. I'm going to keep it together. I'm going to keep it professional.
Yeah. So a lot of times when people hear breath work, they think it's kind of cliche. When you go to a therapist and you're telling them things and they tell you to take deep breaths, you're like, I didn't come here for that. But hear me out, right? When we were talking about your nervous system earlier, a lot of times, most people take short, shallow breaths. We don't really breathe into our diaphragm. When you take short and shallow breaths, it can activate your fight or flight in your nervous system. Because think about it, when you hyperventilate, you're kind of like, you're not taking deep breaths, and it's your body's way of trying to protect you. When you're taking deep breaths into your diaphragm, taking in all the air that you can, pausing, you want to make sure that you're breathing into your stomach and your diaphragm and not your chest if you can, and letting all the air out. It's helping to put all the oxygen that in the places where it needs to go, and it's helping to regulate your heart rate, which can help you regulate your nervous system, and again help you to assess properly what's going on. If you need something that's comparable, think about athletes. When you're playing a sport or you're running or whatever it may be, your breath is integral. Because it's helping you to focus, it's helping you to sustain whatever sport or whatever it is that you're doing, and it helps you to be healthy. Because if you're playing a football game, or you're playing a basketball game, and you're running a marathon, and you're taking these, you're gonna pass out, right?
True.
You gotta breathe.
True.
So that is, I think, the foundation there. And it can also, in those moments where you're pausing and you're doing that breath work, it can help you in that moment to calm.
Get it down.
It can.
Because wait a minute, I'm about to cuss you out. Wait a minute, bitch.
Like, I'm gonna take a second and I'm gonna step away. And it can, I'm not gonna say it's gonna make you do a 180, but it can help you calm down in that moment. Because again, if your nervous system is already at the point where you're like fight, flight, or freeze, and you keep breathing in those short and shallow breaths,
it's gonna make it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's gonna make you do something that's a complete 180, but it can help. So one activity that one breathwork activity that I enjoy is, I don't particularly have a name for it, but essentially you can get yourself situated.
I'm not trying to get myself situated. Okay, come on. We're going to do a breathwork exercise. Let's do it.
So what you're going to do is you are going to inhale for 2, and you're going to exhale for 2. And you're going to keep going. I'll do it with you because it might sound a little bit complicated, but you're going to keep going until you are exhaling for 10. So you're going to inhale for 2, exhale for 2. You're going to inhale for 2 again, then you exhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale for 2. So you got to take all the air you can. And then 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale again. 8, 7.
Oh shit.
5, 4, 2, 1. And the last one is.
But then we're gonna make it to 10, y'all. Do you see what I'm saying?
So here's the thing, right? As you can tell, first of all, you gotta pay attention when you're counting so you can keep
Right, because
up.
I was still on 6, you was on 8.
Right. You gotta pay attention. But also, it forces you to slow down with your breath because you can take all the air in, but if you're trying to make it to 10, you have to like really kind of focus on pushing the air out. And I also encourage people to imagine that you're blowing the air out as if you're pushing it out through a straw.
Okay.
And that can help kind of just regulate the breath work in that moment. That can help you if you feel like you're about to have a panic attack and you need to kind of reel it in. Most recently, when I was in Atlanta and I was a part of the hiking group, we did swimming lessons. And that was a breathwork activity I used to help people get their lungs ready to be like, in the water, but also to help you regulate your nervousness when you're in the water, so that you can, because when you're swimming, you have to breathe out. And so being able to use that, then there are a plethora of breathwork activities. And I'm not saying that this is just, take a deep breath and everything's going to be all right, but it can be a part of your toolkit to help you with anxiety, to help you pause when you need to, or to just like, you know what, I'm having a stressful day. I have this at work. I've been, grinding it for 3 hours. Let me take a pause. Let me check in with my body. Let me take a deep breath. Because in that moment, you might realize, oh, my chest is a little bit tight, or my
shoulders. Yes, you got to put your shoulders back.
I have a headache, or my eyes are hurting. You probably won't realize that if you're not pausing and you're able to take a deep breath. So just really honestly getting in touch with your body, I think breath work can really be helpful with that. Because a lot of us are not in touch with our bodies. We just kind of are used to going. And then we realize that at the end of the day, like, why am I in pain? Why am I hurting? Why is this?
Girl, because my hip was hurting yesterday, but I think it was from me standing up for too long and not stretching. But just what you're saying, you have to be in tune with your body because your emotions are trapped in the hips. They get trapped in certain portions of your body. And I think being in control of your breath, being cognizant of that can definitely help. So what I'm hearing is we need to take time to rest when needed. We need to take time to evaluate the situations that get us rattled, that get us out of our center. We need to take action, but responsibly. We need to give ourselves grace. We need to learn how to sit with ourselves and sit with our emotions and understand that the emotions are going to come. Those are involuntary. I know my husband likes to say, you're in charge of your emotions. I am not. I am in charge of my reaction to my emotions. These emotions just came upon me. I did not invite these emotions here. Okay, these emotions came upon me. But being cognizant of your emotions, being aware of what that means, being aware of why you even feel this way, pausing, taking accountability, and kind of recalibrating. I think all of this is especially important during this time with seasonal depression. Is starting to creep in. People are losing family members. Grief is starting to creep in. And it could take a toll. And you may not even realize that it's taking a toll on you until you're so far down that path. And now you really have to take these tools out of your toolbox to just get yourself back to center. Can you share with us maybe 2 tips that are essential to your daily wellness?
To my daily wellness?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Look, we want to know what the psychotherapist is doing to decompress, because it sounds good, but I want to know what you're doing.
Yeah. So before I even get to the point where I have to decompress, I would say maybe over the past, maybe like 3 years or so, I started adopting the notion that in the mornings, I move slow. And I have the saying that before I am for anyone or anything else, I'm for God and I'm for myself. So I check in with God, I check in with myself. I move as slow as I can in the morning because I pour a lot throughout the day. And it gives me a moment to check in with myself, to not start my day with a tight chest because I'm rushing and I'm anxious. And I give all that I have away before I even check in to give anything to myself. So that is my go-to. I get up, and I am not a morning person. I have never been a morning person. But as an adult now, I find it like I have to put that to the side and give myself a little bit more time in the morning to get myself just together. That's critical for me. Moving my body, because to your point, I'm able to do what I do because I don't carry mentally other people's stuff from, the therapy sessions, but I do hold a lot of tension in my body. So moving my body is critical for me. I have my seasons where I'm on it more than others, but whether it is yoga or Pilates or even just taking a walk, if I can, stretching, rest. There are different types of rest. Actual sleep. Sleep hygiene is important. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't get as much rest as we should, and it causes us to have higher stress levels. It can impact our heart health. It can cause us to have issues with our weight. It can be a lot. And so making sure that I'm getting as much sleep as I can and quality rest, trying to focus on that. And also engaging in other types of rest. When I'm off work, I'm off work.
There it is.
When I'm done, I'm done. One of the things that's also big for me is boundaries. And this is something that I, want to add to that list that you ran down, boundaries. Because if you don't, you're going to give all of yourself away and have nothing left.
And have nothing left.
And then you're going to be resentful because you've given all of yourself away, but you did it.
But that's hard. I think that's hard depending on the level of responsibilities that you have. I'm told all the time, like, you gotta set your boundaries and rest and all the things. But then my to-do list is like a scroll. You know what I mean? So it's hard to set boundaries and to stand on those boundaries. And just what you say is like, oh, you've done it to yourself. But it's like, really, I was just trying to keep going. I was trying to, cooking and the cleaning and just doing all of the things that need to be done. So it wasn't, I always feel like I'm pouring from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And it isn't until maybe 6 months ago that I started to focus on me. And that was even hard for me to do because I almost felt selfish. I felt a little irresponsible. I felt like, oh my gosh, if I take a break, what is going to happen? And little by little, I started incorporating just little things for me. And I didn't realize how depleted I was until I started putting driplets and driplets of water into my cup. And I don't think that just what we were saying, you don't realize that you're at that wall until you're at that wall. And I think that we've been conditioned to hold so much, to take in so much that there's not an equal outlet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that the realization of that, one, hurts.
Yeah.
Because it's like, wow, what made me think I had to carry all of this? When did I start doing it? I don't even remember not.
Yeah.
I'm coming off of an 11-year grieving cycle. Literally, I was grieving for 11 years and I didn't realize what was happening because I was keeping my head above, well, this was me. This was water and this was my head above water. But I felt like as long as I was maintaining, as long as it looked good, that I was okay.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend of mine, she's like, your life is so perfect. I never would have thought that you were grieving. I said, well, what makes you think my life is so perfect? And she says, well, because you don't put anything on social media like that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, the world is full of negativity. Other people are grieving. There's not a day that I'm going to put on social media, come on there with tears. And I want to stay in the light. You know what I mean? I want to show people that this is what it looks like when you don't have it all figured out, but you're trying to put one foot, in front of the other. And I almost feel like I'm starting that cycle all over again. So I just got out of like 11 years worth of grieving, just like realizing that I was there to have this cycle start all over again. We just lost my mother-in-law a week and a half ago. And it's like, oh my gosh, we've done so much work to get to this point. But now I recognize it. And now I'm able to use all of the tools that we've discussed today to kind of maneuver my way, through this different cycle of grief, because it's not only, my mother-in-law is my children's grandmother, it's my husband's mom. So it's really about putting those tools into practice before you hit that wall.
Absolutely.
So for all of those people out there, if you're going through seasonal depression, if you are feeling anxious, or if you're just feeling, I just want to make a change. I want to feel a little lighter. Take advantage of some of the tools and techniques, that we shared with you today. They aren't all perfect. And just what you said, the day that you plant the seed is not the day that you're going to reap the harvest. And so you have to give yourself grace and you have to give yourself time and give the process time and trust the process, because it does get better. But you have to acknowledge those feelings. You have to sit with those feelings and then put a course of action into place, because if not, it can take you out. It can take you out. Now it's a thing where you're expected to, somebody texts you, you're expected to respond, immediately. Did you get my text? Did you see, and it's like, I did, but I needed a minute. Okay. I got some shit going on today, and thank God I don't look like I do, but I have some things going on today. So yes, I did get your message, but I just needed a minute, before I responded. Just little things like that. have helped me, because then I feel guilty. Oh my gosh, I didn't respond. Now they're calling me out. They calling me out, and that wasn't my intention. But do what you need to do for yourself. Do what you need to do for your family, for your community, for your children, for all of those around you, because they're only going to be the recipients of where you are in your life. So I want to say thank you so much
No problem.
for coming and talking with me today. There are not enough words, and I'm not going to get emotional.
Oh.
There are not enough words to describe how immensely proud of you that I am.
Thank you.
I know it has been a journey, and to see you get to where you are, not only in yourself, but then to help the next generation. And try to be that role model and try to lead by example and show them this is okay. What you're going through is okay. What you're going through is not necessarily that unique. But let me tell you what I've seen.
Yeah.
Let me show you what you can do. So kudos to you. And you one of them ones in our community. If you are not tapped in with Miss Bria Brown, we follow her on Instagram, Be Well with Bria. _. Be Well with Bria _ at Instagram. And she shares wonderful tips and techniques. She shares what's in her purse and her bags and her essential oils and things that she carries with her throughout the day. But we need more of you. We need more of you. And we are thankful for you. And check her out. So thank you for joining us today, folks. Until next time, it's Miss October TV. Peace.